Hello, welcome to Steven Shinder Reviews in video form, continuing Chucktober, Day 5, with Seed of Chucky. Hashtag renew Chucky, hashtag review Chucky, and I guess hashtag save Chucky is also going around. But yeah, so this is the fifth film in the Chucky franchise. I forgot to mention on the Bride of Chucky episode that the year that one came out in 1998, there was also a fourth Night of the Living Dummy book called Bride of the Living Dummy. And, the first three were just one, two, three, and then Bride. But after that, the parallels diverge. So this came out November 12th, 2004. I vaguely remember seeing the teaser trailer for this one in front of a film. I don't remember which one it was, but I remember the laughing in the teaser. Like, I found the teaser scarier than this film actually was. It would be several years before I'd see this film, but this leans much more into comedy than even Bride of Chucky did. Although I will say there are things that happen that are pretty dark if you take a step back and maybe even a bridge too far, one could argue. So this picks up 6 years after Bride of Chucky. It's 2004. It begins with the worst intro to a Chucky movie with a CGI recreation of Chucky's seed, but then we get into a dream sequence or nightmare sequence, I should say, where Chucky and Tiffany's doll child, it's from the doll's point of view of the camera. We see that this family opening a package or a present or whatever, and then the doll goes around and kills the parents and tries going after the young daughter. And this feels to me like kind of a test for what we'd see later with the next film, Curse of Chucky. So I should mention this is the first film that Don Mancini not only writes but also directs. And yeah, in Bride, they brought back Graham Revel from Child's Play 2 to do the music, which is why there were a couple moments where it felt very familiar to me, like that Child's Play 2 feel. But here they have Pino Donegallo. Hopefully, that's the correct pronunciation. But this film was made in Romania, and it apparently took a while to get approved because Universal at the time didn't seem that interested in the script, but it got approved by Focus Features and released under Rogue Pictures. Um, so yeah, this was a very different installment. So we have the dream sequence, and when the doll, the spawn of Chucky and Tiffany, who doesn't have their name yet at this point, in the dream, they're trying to go after the daughter, but the daughter berates them, and they p- basically like piss themselves, and it's really strange choice, like just having so much pee in those moments. But yeah, we wake up to the real world, and this doll is in a cage in the possession of this entertainer ventriloquist over in England, and because the doll grew up in England, they're voiced by Billy Boyd, whom you might all know as Pippin from The Lord of the Rings, and believes themselves to be Japanese because on the wrist it says "Made in Japan." And later on, we do see that on Chucky's wrist as well, and it's like, wait, what? I'm not sure that that was always a thing on the doll. Well, I don't know, unless maybe Chucky's hand was from one of those other dolls that Tiffany put together from uh, the collection of dolls that she had in the beginning of Bride of Chucky. I don't know, but the doll sees an interview with Chucky and Tiffany, the dolls, on TV. So this is like a Hollywood production. When a horror franchise goes to Hollywood, it really makes me roll my eyes, and it's something that doesn't really work all that much for me. You know, what I've read of the Psycho 2 novel is it involves Hollywood, and the what I've read of the premise, it sounds pretty awful. Wes Craven's New Nightmare, it's been forever since I've seen it, but I kind of remember thinking, wait, there, so it's Freddy, but now he's in the real world, and it's like it felt too meta than it needed to be, like just with that basic premise. Where I feel like that was sort of a test for Scream, which did some of those elements better. I think Scream 3, you know, that takes place in Hollywood, which for that series, I would say actually makes sense. But even so, Scream 3 is still my least favorite of all the Scream films. And um, I feel like there was something else that, like, took the horror premise to Hollywood, or I don't know, maybe it was just those, but yeah, so taking the Chucky franchise to Hollywood, it felt like it was you know, kind of out there for me, I guess, you know, just given what had come before. Is like, what does a franchise become now? A movie called Chucky Goes Psycho. It's a Christmas movie based on the urban legend of Chucky and Tiffany's murders that took place in Bride of Chucky. And apparently, the dolls that they're using for this film are upgraded versions of the dolls from the site of the murders in Bride of Chucky, and they say murders. I guess they mean, like, you know, the dead couple that's in the RV plus the detective or something. So this, I'm not sure that I really buy. Like, it just seems impractical and also morally unethical to get the dolls from the actual scene of the crime and give them makeovers, you know, animatronic upgrades, and reconstruct them into these dolls to use in this type of film. It's such a ridiculous choice, and there are multiple ridiculous choices in this film. But yeah, the a doll who is known as Shitface by his ventriloquist uh, is like decides to go on the run, and the running shot where we see the doll running like on the street, it looks so fake. It's so bad. Um, but they end up in Hollywood. You know, it gets mailed to themselves or something, and in the studio where Chucky Goes Psycho is being worked on, finds Chucky and Tiffany, you know, the dolls, um, and oh, also their child has the heart of Damballa with them somehow, so and only needs to utter awake in order to bring their souls back into their bodies. And it's like, that seems way too simple. Like, they're really playing fast and loose with the lore at this point, and it's just, yeah, just shortcuts, and it's like, it's ridiculous. But Chucky and Tiffany awaken. One of the people working on the film comes in and tries to open up Tiffany, but notices the organs inside, which I think is actually an interesting detail. You know, just how quickly the doll body becomes more human-like. Um, and Chucky and Tiffany end up killing the guy, you know, beheading him, and this reignites their love for each other, but their child is like, they're stark raving mad. And then Jennifer Tilly, you know, the actress who plays Tiffany, portrays herself in this film as an actress, is very envious of Julia Roberts' career and wants better roles. She comes in and is like, "Oh, the head looks so real," and pretends to, like, she kisses it on the lips before realizing that's an actual severed human head. It's just disgusting, that choice. And then she gets like swarmed by paparazzi, and in the aftermath of all this, and Chucky seems to really hate the paparazzi. I kind of wonder if this is maybe part of, maybe he really hates journalists, people who report on the scenes of his crimes in his past life. Maybe that's part of it, because I'm not sure that he would have much empathy for these photographers just going after this actress. I think he just hates um, photographers and reporters in general sticking their noses where they don't belong. But they end up in the car where Jennifer Tilly and her chauffeur, who is like in love with her, they end up at Jennifer Tilly's house, and they come up with this plan. Tiffany wants to become Jennifer Tilly, put her soul in there, become Jennifer Tilly. In light of what we know from future installments, this time around watching this, I did kind of wonder if maybe Tiffany doesn't just admire Jennifer Tilly, but maybe has like a full on crush on her. I should also mention that with these movies, I've tried starting them at midnight, and but this one I just couldn't start at midnight because I got super sleepy a half hour before and just waited till morning. So there you go. And Chucky would become Redman, who is directing a movie about the Virgin Mary. Um, and he has his own strange vision for how the movie should be. But yeah, that's the plan. Chucky become Redman, Tiffany become Jennifer Tilly, and Jennifer um, really wants the role as Mary and tries to get with Redman. She also has an assistant who um, like is sort of the voice of reason and trying to tell her you shouldn't be doing this type of thing. But yeah, Jennifer Tilly invites Redman over, and they almost like get together. And meanwhile, Chucky and Tiffany uh, tried to do right by their child. To well, Tiffany does anyway. Their child really does not like that they kill and wants them to stop. So Tiffany wants to stop cold turkey, but Chucky really wants to keep killing, but pretends that to keep his promise. Fingers crossed though. So what ends up happening is Redman gets knocked out, and Jennifer as well at some point. And Chucky, they need to get Jennifer Tilly pregnant so that there's a baby to put Chucky and Tiffany's child, who they refer to as Glenn by this point. They need a vessel for Glenn's soul to go into. And Tiffany at one point says she doesn't want to give birth again. Her mother said one's a blessing, two's a curse. And Chucky says, well, that explains your sister. And it's like, wait, Tiffany has a sister? I forgot about this. And like, it's kind of surprising that that hasn't really come up in any of the later Chucky installments. I kind of wonder, like, what's up with her sister. As far as Tiffany's mother, what we learn in this film is that Chucky killed her 20 years earlier, and but he still has to put up with Tiffany spouting her mother's advice all the time. But yeah, in order to get Jennifer Tilly pregnant, they decide that Chucky should, um, fill a cup. It's this really stupid scene. It's like, why did we need this in a Chucky movie? And also, he's going through these magazines, and one of them has like a fairly recent celebrity at the time on the cover, and he's like Dunner. And I'm like, wait, what? Like, when did Chucky have time for that? Like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, at this point, like, all of this is just for the laughs, not trying to take logic into account. And yeah, we have this really unnecessary scene. The paparazzi guy outside sees what Chucky is doing, and also sees what's going on with Tiffany and Redman and Jennifer, and um, you know, Tiffany gets a turkey baster, like to uh, get Chucky's, seed that he just um, provided, and the visual with the turkey basters, it's just so gross. But anyway, Chucky decides he wants to go after the paparazzi guy. He wakes up Glenn, and they drive after the guy. On the road, Chucky does see what's supposed to be, I guess, Britney Spears, like driving around, like her license plate says Britney, and when he rams her off the road and kills her, he says, "Oops, I did it again." And again, like, how does Chucky know the song with like how long he's been like not on this earth, like in between films? It's yeah, it's just another one of those things that doesn't really make sense. And this moment also maybe doesn't really age very well in light of the stuff that happened with Britney later. So like I don't know, but they do end up Glenn accidentally kills the paparazzi guy with this like acidic thing, and Chucky is proud of him, and they take a picture and whatnot. Glenn's crying, and Tiffany gets really upset at Redman for how he's treating Jennifer, and apparently not going to cast her in the Mary movie. And Tiffany like struggles. She's been trying to do this 12-step thing, trying to recover from her killing addiction. Even calling the widow of Officer Bailey from the beginning of Bride of Chucky, telling her that she's sorry, and of course there's crying on the other end and whatnot. She refers to herself as Tiffany Ray, because she's married Chucky. Um, but she also tries calling a helpline when she's on the verge of like getting back to her addiction, but it eventually says, you know what, one slip up is fine, and just ends up stabbing Redman. Uh, um, and Jennifer says, hey, you know what, you can drop dead. And this is also after, I believe this is after she's found out she's pregnant, and or well, she notices how bloated she is anyway, and then is like, Redman had to have been the one, because he's the only one she's been with recently, but he explains why it can't be him. So very perplexed, but of course she eventually like meets Chucky and Tiffany proper, and the gag of the like phone call where she's talking to her assistant and Tiffany is also on the line. That part was kind of annoying, like, we get it. Jennifer Tilly and Tiffany have the same voice. It's the same voice of the same actress. Like, we get it. And like, yeah, so this whole thing, there's this whole mess. The assistant ends up getting killed by who we at first think is Tiffany, but ends up being Glenda. Um, like earlier, Chucky and Tiffany were debating whether their child is a boy or a girl, and or whether it's Glenn or Glenda, but here they're wearing a dress and a wig and I think some makeup, if I remember correctly, and is acting a very dark and whatnot. So it kind of a Norman Bates situation here in terms of the identity. And it's really weird, the mixed metaphors that happen in this movie. Like, yeah, so Don Mancini, of course, a gay man, and there are some things about Glenn slash Glenda's what they say, where they're like, sometimes I wish I was a boy, sometimes I wish I was a girl, can I be both? And Tiffany is supportive, like, you could be what you want, and Chucky's like, no, we're not doing this, like this soft cushy BS, so it feels like he's more conservative in that moment, but then he's like, and I'm a killer and I do not need to hide that in the closet. So it's like, oh, so he's also, it it's like these metaphors that get mixed around, like it's equating killing to that, and it's just really strange. And yeah, this was 2004, and I think just a month after Shark Tale came out, and also had that as um, like a subtext, coming out type thing. But yeah, I think these elements were a factor of why people at the time really did not like this film. But I think also the over the top comedy and not enough horror. I think over time, this film has gotten reevaluated, and people, like Glenn slash Glenda even more, and had been requesting for several years that their storyline be continued. And so maybe some of the queer themes, you could debate how well they work here, or if it's a bit messy. Like, I don't know, but the situation of how they get Jennifer pregnant, and like, which they do it without her permission, and it's like that's just really dark, and especially like what happens later. And we do find out that Chucky apparently has a thing for pregnant women, which is something that does seem to carry over into one of the later installments, but more on that installment at a different point. Um, but yeah, there's all this screaming. So with Redmond dead, the chauffeur is the final choice for where to put Chucky's soul, and he really does not want to be a chauffeur. Jennifer gives birth to twins, a boy and a girl, and they're like, oh, maybe Glenn slash Glenda doesn't need to choose. And if there's a lot of screaming, and Chucky's like, everybody shut up. And he does this whole speech about how he's sick of trying to get a human body, and he finally accepts who he is, a notorious killer doll. And it's a really fun speech. Like, he just realizes that this is what's best for him. As a human, you can get old and sick, and it's easier to get caught, even if you really think about it. So it makes sense that he would prefer to be a killer doll. And he says, I have a lovely wife, a multi talented kid. But Tiffany's like, Chucky, I don't know who you are anymore, and that's not enough for me. I'm leaving you and taking the kid. And Chucky's like, nobody leaves me. And so that later installments kind of improve that moment a bit more, but more on that later. The chauffeur gets stabbed. Jennifer ends up, people end up coming over, and she's taken to the hospital with her two twin babies. Somehow, Glenn slash Glenda and Tiffany are already in the ambulance or whatever vehicle they get there in. Chucky follows them, uses an axe, fails to do the shining shout out, which, I mean, I know it was on purpose, so, whatever. Chucky ends up killing Tiffany, or, he uses the axe on her, I think. And, well, this was after Tiffany was trying to switch souls with Jennifer Tilly. And so during the dying moments when Glenn slash Glenda is holding Tiffany's doll body, she says, don't make the same mistakes your parents made, especially your dad. And so it's like, is this Tiffany or is it Jennifer saying it? Like, at the moment, we're supposed to think that it's Tiffany, and Glenn slash Glenda gets mad. Like, the whole cringy gag of we are Japanese, like that, comes back here by Glenn slash Glenda doing martial arts, all these flips and whatnot. And it's like, Chucky's like, Glenda, and they're like, no, it's me, Glenn, your boy, and that type of thing. And like, do you love me now, Dad? And like, that feels like it's coming from an experience that lots of people have had, where their parents do not accept them for who they are. But yeah, Glenn, I guess we'll call them here, uses the axe to dismember Chucky, arm and whatnot. And Chucky's like, that's my boy, and seems proud in his dying moments. And then Jennifer goes over to comfort Glenn. And then it cuts to 5 years later, so 2009. I think it's like Glenn and Glenda's birthday party or something. Jennifer Tilly is talking to the babysitter. I think it is, and saying that Glenn is sweet, but Glenda is scary. And Jennifer also has the Tiffany doll. Apparently, it's like been repaired or something. There's more on that at a later point in the Chucky TV series, but um, Jennifer turns out to be Tiffany. Like her eyes turn green, and she like kills the babysitter. Glenda watches from outside of a glass door with glee, and then meanwhile, Glenn continues narrating. Billy Boyd is still doing the narration, so it's not the kid playing his voice. And their hair is red, so it's like supposed to be like Chucky the doll's red hair, as opposed to the black hair of Charles Lee Ray, you know, in his previous human life. And he has a photo of him with his dad. He's like, uh, despite it all, I know that my dad loved me. And then Glenn is given a present, and he opens it, and it's Chucky's arm, and he uh, gets really scared, and then the arm reaches up, I guess for the throw, and then we hear the laugh, and goes to end credits, and it's that song "One Way or Another," and like a montage of clips from the movie. So yeah, there were some choices I thought were really ridiculous, um, and choices I thought were perhaps a bridge too far in terms of the darkness. The souls, the split up soul of Glenn and Glenda replacing the souls of Jennifer's actual babies. Like after she gives birth, she's like, "Give me my babies!" Like she really cares about them, regardless of how they came to be. So I feel bad for Jennifer Tilly and for the babies, and yeah, like those babies' souls are pretty much gone. Like with or at least like have Glenn and Glenda's souls in the driver's seat, and yeah, it's just I don't know. Like to me, it's just too far and too mean spirited. That like there were some moments that were somewhat funny, and some moments I thought were kind of not as funny as they were trying to be, and just yeah, it's not quite the same horror that the earlier installments had. And for a while, it felt like this film was the death of the franchise. And, I watched the Chucky films um, probably like 2010 or something like that. So for a couple years there, it kind of felt like the franchise was stagnant or was going to be rebooted. There were rumblings of a possible remake coming up at some point, but eventually we did get a continuation within the same universe, and there was like a little comic story, like a crossover with Hack and Slash, which I guess takes place between Seed and Curse. Like it's been a while. It doesn't really answer whatever questions one may have. Like the ending, from what I remember anyway, like the ending of Seed, like how did the arm get mailed and whatever had Chucky come back? Like that's never really answered from what I remember. Um, but yeah, the franchise did later come back with a vengeance in 2013 with Curse of Chucky. But for Seed of Chucky, I think like I said, people considered this the worst one for quite a while, but over the last several years came around and sort of appreciate it more. But to me, I think, um, Glenn slash Glenda as a character, I think turned out to be a good addition to the franchise. Some of the things that were handled in this film, I'm not so sure about, and the stuff that's kind of too dark, like kind of clouds some of this for me. But there are entertaining moments here and there, so I'm not sure I would say it's bad, but it's maybe like okay. So I think I'd give this a 6 out of 10 overall, and I'd say my least favorite of the Chucky films, unless you include the remake, in which case that would be the worst one in my book. But yeah, so tomorrow I'll be back talking about Curse of Chucky. And thanks for tuning in to Steven Shinder Reviews in video form for Chucktober. And I'll see you all next time.